programs! My name is Zayn Abraxas, and welcome back to another tier list video. This time I'm going through the video I promised back during the uniform tier list, which is the Star Trek tier list, as in shows, movies. I am ranking each show and each film in a tier list, similar to how I did the uniforms. This one I'm probably going to catch far more flack on because, well, it's the internet and the Trekkie fandom is very, very finicky. So this, I'm going to be going from roughly production order, mostly focusing on starting with the original series cast and then next gen series, and then when I feel like, oh, there was a movie there was a movie there, kind of sort of. Look, it's my tier list. I'm gonna go in the order I feel is right and appropriate, essentially like how I like to view things. Bear with me on that. It may not make sense, it might drive some of you crazy, but that's what the comment sections are for. So you have any questions, qualms with my tier list? You know where to go. Comment section. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into it because, quite frankly, I'm eager to start this. So let's go ahead and start with where it all began, the original series. TOS. Where do you even start with this? Started in 1966 and ran from 1966 to 1969 with 3 seasons. Following the adventures of the USS Enterprise under Captain Kirk, James T. Kirk. Started it all. The first 2 seasons are phenomenal. Like, I would still recommend anybody who wanted to get into Trek at least check out the original series and watch the original series. The first 2 seasons definitely have a good chunk of good episodes. Like they have, like, it's all pretty much enjoyable in my mind. You have a few stinkers in there, but well, what television show doesn't? The third season's where we kind of dip off. The show was supposedly canceled after the second season, but due to a massive letter writing campaign, the show got a third season. The budget was almost halved, and it shows, but there are still good episodes in the third season. I'm also adding in the animated series into the original series as well, just because it acts almost like a 4th season for the original series. So I would honestly, because when you look at the original series, there's still a lot of episodes that cover topics that are relevant in this day and age, which shows the staying power of Star Trek. So honestly, you know what? I still enjoy the original series, even if it is a little dated at times. The original series gets an A from me. It's not S. Let's just be clear here. The original series is not perfect. Even from somebody who wasn't even alive or thought of back when this show aired. This show is not perfect. It's not, but it's still good. It's still watchable. It's still enjoyable. It's still well written, well cast. It's a solid A. It is a solid A show. And I know people are going to be angry at me about that. But you have to understand from a non-subjective viewpoint, the show isn't perfect. It's not. I don't care what anybody says. The show is not perfect. Honestly, none of these really are. But again, this is just my opinion. So if you have a problem with it, please, by all means, we can have a civil discourse in the comments. Of course, like I said, after the original series, we got the animated series, which ran, and the animated series is still fairly good too. That's why I'm lumping it in A. The animated series, despite running for 2 seasons, is still fairly good. It's all together. It's still watchable, enjoyable, and fun. It's just fun to watch. And now we go to the movies, the original series movies, starting with the motion picture. First one that premiered December 7th, 1979. In my uniform tier list, I ranked this the uniforms in this pretty harshly, mainly because, again, it was very of the times. And this movie was directed by Robert Wise, produced by Gene Roddenberry. To put it bluntly, it's fine. But to non-Trekkies, you're not going to like it. You're not. Let's be real here. This is not a good movie. It's a decent Star Trek movie, but it's not a good movie. There are a lot of panning shots, special effects shots. I think Leonard Nimoy himself is quoted as saying they tried to recreate 2001: A Space Odyssey. You do get that feel with a lot of the effect shots, exterior shots. It is a slow movie. It's not fast-paced at all. One of my main problems with it is that the plot is very similar to an original series episode. I'll go ahead and just issue spoiler warnings here. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, again, this premiered in '79. If you haven't seen it, essentially the twist we discover is that the big bad of the movie is an old Earth probe that has gained sentience and is returning to Earth to reunite with its creator, not realizing that it's humanity because it views carbon-based units as lower life forms that are incapable of creating it. So it needs to be taught that. Which is very similar to an original series episode, The Changeling, in which the Enterprise encounters an old Earth probe that has gained sentience. So, I mean, it's kind of frustrating that they revisited this topic, his plot thread, and it's like, you guys didn't stop to think. Again, I could rant and rave about it. But if I were to suggest a Star Trek movie for somebody to watch, this wouldn't be it. I can sit and watch it and enjoy it because, again, I enjoy the characters, I enjoy the cast, and it's still a somewhat enjoyable film from a Trekkie's viewpoint. But for any non-Trekkies, this film is going to bore the ever-living hell out of them. And that's just the blunt truth there, folks. You have to accept it. And honestly, there are times where I would probably skip this. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy it, but if I was going to do a full watch through and I'm like, I need a feel-good movie or just a movie to sit back and enjoy, this isn't it. This isn't it. So honestly, I'm going to throw it in C. I'm going to throw it in C just because it is a slow burn of a film. The cast do their best. I will admit, the cast do their best. They're still enjoyable to watch. But again, there are a good chunk of scenes where people are just sitting there watching the view screen, watching what's happening. So it's very slow to watch and kind of sometimes just, yeah, I'm watching. We're still okay. So yeah, it's okay. And now we move on to the film, the sequel that saved the film franchise. Let's be real here. That's exactly what happened. Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan. I'm using Memory Alpha to help me with some of the details here, so please bear with me on that. Premiered in 1982, directed by Nicholas Meyer, who honestly is an unsung hero. I do think he deserves a lot of recognition for his decisions in this film. This is a complete tonal difference from the motion picture. We deal a lot with death and how we face it. Kobayashi Maru being the primary example. That's how the film opens. We also see the return of Ricardo Montalban as the villain Khan Noonien Singh, which he portrays beautifully. And the cast, it does an amazing job. Again, I won't try to spoil too much of this film, but this was the start of the quote-unquote Genesis trilogy, which the next three films essentially cover and encompass. This is a film that I've heard described as it's a good Star Trek film, but it's not even that. It's also a good movie. It is a good movie. The pacing is fantastic. I think non-Trekkies could sit and enjoy this just because it's very much Hunt for Red October. It's very militaristic with the Enterprise and the Reliant playing cat and mouse. The space battles are wonderful. It keeps your attention. The action in it is very good. So honestly, this movie is A. I would put this movie in A. Is it an S? There are better movies. That's going to be a hot take. I think there are better movies on this list that I'm reserving for S. This is, don't get me wrong, Wrath of Khan is still a fantastic movie. I still enjoy watching it on all my Trek watch throughs, but it's not S. The score, though, can't recommend it. The score, like I said, the movie's good and the score is good. I'm trying to justify my A ranking here, okay? I'm trying to save myself from the pitchforks. But anyway, moving on to the immediate sequel, Star Trek 3 and the Search for Spock. Oh, Lord, be easier. Thank you. Which came out in 1984. It is a direct sequel to Wrath of Khan. This again, now that we've now have 3 films under the film franchise, we haven't quite hit that mark of the odd number curse. It's a bit of a running joke within this Trekkie community that the odd numbered movies are not as great as the even numbered ones, which again, considering that the motion picture was the first one, then we had Wrath of Khan, which is an amazing movie, and now we have Search for Spock. Search for Spock is a good movie. It was directed by Leonard Nimoy, and it was, so I guess this has to spoil a bit of the second film. Spock dies at the end of Wrath of Khan. He dies. He gives his life to save the ship. Because originally Leonard Nimoy was like, I will be in this film as long as you kill me, because I want to move on. They then offered him the chance to direct this film and bring the character back. So win-win, I guess. This film, I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy this film too. This is a fun film. It's got great pacing, great score, great visual effects for the time. It's not as strong as Wrath of Khan, but it's still good. It's still a solid film. I honestly have to give it an A rank. Just because, again, it is enjoyable. It's fun to watch. The scene of Kirk ordering the self-destruct sequence and watching the Enterprise blow up in orbit of the Genesis planet is impactful. It was shocking. And for those, like I say, for those that didn't know it, was like, oh. And Christopher Lloyd as the villain, playing the Commander Krug. It is, to me, when I first watched it, it was kind of like, hey, what? It was definitely very shocking to me, but I was all for it because he plays that part so well. It is awesome to see Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon and just a ruthless Klingon. It is wonderful. I love it. So yeah, that's why this film gets an A rank, is Christopher Lloyd as the villain, the visual effects, the story too. I love the last scene. The last scene still gets me. Where Spock has his mind back and he looks at Kirk and they have that bit of dialogue. It is enough to just get you right in the heart. And I love it. It is very impactful. Now we go to one of my personal favorite Star Trek films, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. For those of you who know, who are in on the joke, and sometimes it's weird how this film kind of rises and falls in popularity in the community. I always love to hear the joke, the one with the whales, which it is the one with the whales. But Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home came out in 1986 and again was directed by Leonard Nimoy. The story was done by Nicholas Meyer. Or the screenplay was by Nicholas Meyer, and the story was by Leonard Nimoy and Harve Bennett, a longtime producer of the show and movies. This film's weird in terms of tone, in terms of like, it's a time travel movie. So you have that. They go back to present day Earth, 1986, to save whales because a probe has entered Earth orbit in the 23rd century, is causing massive chaos and mayhem and wants to communicate with whales. So it's very on theme for Star Trek. It's very like, hey, this is a problem we have in our time and we need to address this, because at the time whales were being hunted into extinction. So Here we have the film addressing it, and ironically enough, the humpback whale population blossomed, I think at least a decade ago from this recording, and the whale population is no longer in danger of being endangered. So that's, hey, the message got through. Plenty of people watched this film and was like, okay, yeah, we need to stop that. But we have an amazing cast again. Or I guess I should say the same cast, the original series cast, but they do wonderfully. This is a film almost borderlines as a comedy in some areas, which is great. This is my feel-good film. This is my feel-good film. When I want to watch a film and feel good, this is absolutely the one I watch because it is joyful, it's fun, it's light, and the music, this score. There is one piece in particular, and it's right at the end, that never fails to bring a tear to my eye. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's so uplifting and joyous. It's very much happy tears, but it just hits you right there, and it's so wonderful. This honestly is our first S rank, just because it is just wonderful. It is a wonderful film, and it rounds off the Genesis trilogy, and I love it. I love this film to death. This is the film I recommend to people. Yes, it's the last bit of the trilogy, but if you want me to recommend a Star Trek film for everyone to enjoy, Star Trek IV: Voyage Home is just mwah, chef's kiss. And now we get to the much maligned Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Premiering in 1989, directed by William Shatner, who helped write the story. This film gets a lot of hate. And you know what? It's not deserved. It's a little clunky in areas. It is a little clunky in areas, and the budget dipped a bit. I think the studio was like, "Look, we just gave you these last few films. They've done okay. You're not going to have a great big budget," and it kind of shows in the effects. But I've never really held too many special effects to mean bad or good movie. They do the best they can with it, and they do all right. The plot definitely takes some people aback. The character moments in this film are what make this film good. It's a good movie. The campfire scene with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy is priceless. It's enjoyable. Loving seeing these characters interact and talk to each other, even throughout the rest of the film. These moments that they share. And when Sybok, our movie's villain, he's supposed to be the antagonist, but call him a villain? No, that's not a good word for him. Antagonist would be because he's the antithesis of our heroes. He causes the problems of our heroes, so therefore he is the antagonist. But villain? No, he's not a villain. When he's showing the characters and helping them with their pain, as he does, those moments are just makes you stop and go, whoa. And it's the reason why I hate that this film gets all the hate. I used to be one of those haters just because I was young and stupid. And now I've come across like this film is enjoyable. It's watchable. Do I think it goes up with Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock? No, but it's still a good movie. It's a B rank movie. It's good. It's good, but it's definitely not top tier, but it's still good. It's still enjoyable to watch. Again, when you're comparing like what's come before, yeah, it's not as great, but it's still solid. It's still a solid film. So yeah, we're going to keep moving right along here to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the original series cast's final outing. And boy, did they go out with a bang. With Christopher Plummer as our main villain, General Chang, you have David Warner as Chancellor Gorkin, and just This film was, I'm going to pull it up here so I can get my details right. This film was also directed by Wrath of Khan director Nicholas Meyer, with story by Leonard Nimoy, who wanted to help kind of bring Star Trek into the era of post-Cold War, with the Klingons representing the Russians and, of course, Federation, the United States. It's a very Star Trek heavy film in theme, in tone. This film is heavy. It's not definitely a feel-good film, but that ending is the final battle, and the ending scene is just perfect. It is wonderful. It is a great send-off to the original series cast. I can't recommend this film enough either. So this is definitely another S rank film for me. This is S rank. It is a fantastic film. It is I would also qualify it as a political thriller almost, just because of what's going on, the conspiracies. It's wonderful, and the cast, like, they even have like a line where, do you think we are getting so old that we are becoming irrelevant? I'm paraphrasing, but it is like, just like, it's self-aware. It's a wonderful film, folks. I can't stress this enough. If you haven't seen anything of the original series, check it out. It holds up. A lot of stuff still holds up, especially these films. They still hold up to this day. I would argue that tooth and nail, that these films still hold up. Right, now we step into the 24th century, and possibly one of my favorite Star Trek series, and I'm doing my best not to be biased here. Star Trek: The Next Generation, with the adventures of the USS Enterprise D, set roughly 80 years after the original series, with Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Man, where do I start with this? Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot movie, is wonderful. It's a great pilot. It sets up everything. With John Delancey as Q, it sets up beautifully, and then takes a couple stumbles the next 2 episodes that aired. But anyway, I could rattle off good episodes all in every season. I'm not going to, because I'll be here all day. But the first 2 seasons, yeah, are a little, like, they're rough around the edges, but there are still good episodes in those first 2 seasons. And then by season 3, this show has found its footing, and it sets itself apart from the original series in such a way that you can't compare the two anymore. And it's wonderful. It's beautifully written. The show does tend to get a little darker as we get through. Like, by season 5, I think we start to get darker tones and not afraid to go to dark places. This roughly being shortly after Gene Roddenberry passed away, who I believe wanted the show to stay light, and eventually they got to, like, no, we can't, which, that's fine. Because honestly, this show stands the test of time, and I believe is superior to the original series. It sets itself apart and stands above it's the original series. This is where I'm going to run into issues. Like, how do I rank the movies and the shows? I mean, honestly, it's better than the movies. It is better than the movies in some aspects. But to say that, like I said, you can't compare a movie, an hour and a half film, to a 7-season series. So they share that rank. They share that rank. I still think Voyage Home, like I said, is a better movie than Undiscovered Country, just because, again, this film is lighter. It's enjoyable. It's my go-to feel-good film. This one, if I want to watch a good movie, like say you wanted to watch Oppenheimer, this is the film to watch. Like, I'm going to sit down, I want to watch a movie. That's the movie I would recommend. Let's keep going. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This film this series premiered alongside Next Generation. I believe it came out this came out during the 5th or 6th season, I believe. Let me see. It aired in 1993. Okay, 93. So it was the 6th season. During 6th season, so it ran alongside Next Generation for a while. I think they had at least one crossover episode where some cast intermingled. a bit. The pilot too, Emissary, which the pilot of DS9 set the bar and the tone of that show so beautifully, with Sisko essentially getting in Picard's face about his role as the cutest and the death of his wife. You then realize, oh, he's not one to mess around. Sisko is, and you kind of get this feeling that, oh, he's got a chip on his shoulder. Got it. And this show dealt with far more serious, overarching storylines that continued from season to season. Eventually, we got into the Dominion War, which was 2 whole seasons, and by season 7, it was a whole overarching story arc from start of season 7 to the series finale. And it feels like this show never lets up, but in such a good way. DS9 is wonderfully written, beautifully acted, and my God, like this show, I honestly put up there with Next Gen just because it is such a good series. Not a good, great, fantastic series. Seriously, Star Trek Next Generation, DS9 are 2 of my favorite Star Trek series, and you can't compare the 2 because tone-wise, Next Gen was very episodic. DS9 was not. And that's it. They're both just fantastic. Like, if you want to get lost in Next Gen, you can turn on a random episode of Next Gen and probably have a good time. DS9, you could do that, but you might miss some details from the previous episode. But again, DS9, I just love to death. It is beautiful. If you enjoy Next Gen, check out DS9. It is fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and kind of cut in with the production order here with the first TNG film, Star Trek Generations. Pardon me. Which premiered November of 1994. So TNG had just finished All Good Things, one of the amazing series finale. They immediately started production of Star Trek Generations. So they were like, nope, we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep it going. We're going to wrap it up here. The whole selling point was 2 generations meet. Captain Kirk, Captain Picard are going to have an adventure together. That's right there on the poster, essentially. 2 captains, 1 destiny. And we get an amazing cast once again. The Next Generation cast, almost like they just again, they went right from All Good Things into Generations. So without skipping a beat, they were just still like you felt it. They performed very well. You had Malcolm McDowell as our villain, Dr. Tolian Soren. Alan Ruck appeared as Captain John Harriman of the Enterprise B, and it's not a bad film. I have some issues with it, nothing major, but for the TNG's cast first film outing, it's not. I don't hate this film. I hate how they handled Picard and Kirk's meeting, like on Viridian 3 and Kirk's death. I really feel like that was a misstep, but again, that's been nitpicked to death and said numerous times before. It's still a good film. The score of this film, though, my God, the music of this film is fantastic. Honestly, I'm ranking it right with Star Trek Generations. I'm putting it right, or Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier. It's definitely a good film. It's not one I would immediately seek out and sit down and watch, but it is still a good film that I would say is enjoyable to watch. The destruction of the Enterprise D still hurts to this day, but the crash sequence is still, in terms of special effects, is wonderful. But yeah, it's like I said, it's not terrible. It's not bad. But like I said, I would rather pick like the A rank or S rank films before I pick 5 or Generations. So now we're going to go to Star Trek Voyager, which I believe premiered during DS9's third season, 1995. Yeah. So during DS9's third season. This one, I know I'm going to get some hate for my feelings on this film or series. So let's just get this out of the way. This series, which I believe started production in 94. So while Generations was being filmed, DS9 is still underway, Voyager started. Voyager is essentially lost in space in that a ship is plucked and sent 70,000 light years to the other side of the galaxy, and they now have to get home. And at the time, during Star Trek in universe, we had the Maquis, which was essentially these colonists that were unhappy with how things had been set up, with a border being relocated. They were trapped and they're like, hey, we were forgotten. We're not okay with this. We're taking matters in our own hands. So now you had these rebels with Starfleet on one ship, and that was a very interesting dynamic. It lasted a season and a half. I don't even think it lasted a half. I think it lasted the first season, and then that whole arc was gone. And then I do enjoy a lot of the characters in this film. And God, why do I keep saying film? In this series, my problem was that it would sometimes, hey, we're picking this character to do an episode about, and suddenly this character gets a trait or a bit of a backstory that we never knew about. That could have been a thing of television of the 90s. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I grew up in it, but I was a kid, so I never really appreciated that. But sometimes it just felt like out of the blue, like Chakotay, we find out in one episode he enjoys boxing. He enjoys boxing. Never picked up on that through any of the series until that one episode. Or Tom Paris enjoys the sea. Got that in one episode. Never picked up on that at all anywhere else. And it's never brought up again. So to me, it's like they would pick episodes to be like, oh yeah, he really enjoyed this. Where did that come from? But okay. That is to say, this series isn't bad either. It's not bad. I'm gonna get some hate for this. I know I'm gonna get some hate for this. It's definitely a B rank. It's an absolute B rank. I have to say it's B, because the ship itself is gorgeous and there are some fantastic episodes in it, but it's just how the writing was compared to DS9. I would much rather watch DS9. I would even watch the original. Yeah, honestly, I think I am saying that. I think I'd watch the original series before I'd watch Voyager, just because the writing would sometimes be all over the place and be like, skip. And that's the thing. They're not like, I think each show had one episode that I would be like, I skip. I at least Next Generation, I could think of the top of my head, had two in the first two seasons. One in season one in season two. You might be able to guess which episodes I'm talking about. DS9 had one, I think, had one. Original series has one that is just notoriously bad, and it's not the one you think. It's not the one you think. Voyager? Yeah. Normally I wouldn't say skip an episode, but sometimes I felt like I could be like, is this episode over? I hate to say it. I know I'm going to catch some flack from some friends of mine, but I'm ranking Voyager in B. It's not bad. I could still sit and watch it, but there are times where I'm like, I already feel the hate, and that's okay. So moving immediately right along, let's go to the second TNG film, Star Trek First Contact, which is probably, you know what? It's not exactly my favorite, but it's definitely a good film. Premiered in 1996. Is again another time travel film. It features the return of the Borg in a much more graphic way, I would say. We saw the introduction of the Borg Queen and the introduction of the Enterprise E. And let me tell you, that ship is beautiful. It is a beautiful ship. The film itself, I would say, is definitely more of an action film. But there are elements, I've even heard it qualified as a sci-fi horror film with how the Borg are. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. The Borg are terrifying in this film. I'm going to go ahead and rank this film right there with Wrath of Khan. Just because, again, this is definitely an action film with elements of sci-fi horror with the way the Borg are treated. It's not a perfect film. It's not an S-rank film. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. This film was directed by Jonathan Frakes. I didn't say who directed Generation, so I do apologize about that. But I will say this is the first film directed by Jonathan Frakes, who directs the next two films. He directs this one and the next one. And it's wonderful. It's still like a good film. I could sit and enjoy it and have a good time. But it's not a perfect film. It's not. But I would say, again, definitely one of the better of the 4 TNG films, which I'm going to go ahead and talk about because, again, the next two things we have to talk about are the last two next-gen films. Star Trek Insurrection, which came out, let me see, this was in 96. That one I don't think wasted any time and came out in 98, 2 years later. DS9 was still on the air. Voyager was still on the air. I think DS9 was actually getting close to wrapping up. But yeah, Voyager was still on the air. So we had Star Trek Insurrection. This is the best TNG film. I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is the best TNG film. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and make quite the bold statement. This is an S-rank film. I would put it right there between Star Trek 6 and Star Trek 4 because it is essentially an hour-and-a-half long TNG episode. And what more could you ask for from a film? A Star Trek film. It's essentially a big episode with a movie-sized budget. It's fantastic. It falls in line with social commentary. The villain, Ruafel, is a fantastic villain. Based purely on his motives, based purely on vengeance. The space battle we get, again, it's a very actiony film, but it's still very true to Star Trek in its theming and story. So you get the best of both worlds, and it's wonderful. I love this film. This is my go-to TNG film. You get heartfelt moments with Geordi being able to see a sunset with his natural eyes, and that scene alone is enough to make me just go, oh, it's so good. It's just, again, one of those films I can't recommend enough. If you enjoy Next Generation, this is the film for you. And now we come up to Star Trek, the Next Generation's cast last film outing with Star Trek Nemesis. Oh boy, how do we talk about this film? This film aired in 2002. Voyager has since wrapped. Enterprise had just started. This is directed by Stuart Baird. I think I'm saying his name right. Stuart Baird. The story was written by Josh Logan, Rick Berman, and Brent Spiner because Brent Spiner wanted Data to die because he felt like he was aging out of the role, so he didn't want to be brought back, so he pulled a Leonard Nimoy and he's like, kill me off. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen that film yet, but it's 2002. Sorry, you've missed both there. But this film I do enjoy in that it takes a deep dive into the Romulans, TNG's probably primary antagonist. The Borg popped up every now and then, but the Romulans were more of a staple villain of the Next Generation. So we got a bit of a dive into their culture. We had Tom Hardy as the villain Shinzon with Ron Perlman as his viceroy. Probably couldn't tell under all that makeup, but yeah, that's Ron Perlman as his viceroy, who gets into a good fight with Riker in it. And this film has good moments, and I believe on paper could have potentially been an A rank film, maybe even S rank. It's not. There are some issues with this film. I think the whole, like, again, I do know there are some reasons for the plot points that are there, but like the whole B4 Data's brother plot point is kind of forced in. I think just because they wanted to do it, like, we want to give them a car. We'll give them a car. And that, to me, is like, I see the reasoning, but part of me is still like, you just wanted to do this, so you did. And yeah, still feels kind of forced. I heard someone once describe the final battle between the Enterprise and the Riemann Scimitar as trying to recreate Wrath of Khan, because it does kind of take place in a nebula. They can't see each other. Well, no, that's not entirely true, because the Riemann ship is cloaked, so they can see. But the final battle is cool, but it doesn't save the film from its problems. Data's death, though, is very heroic and is very. It does kind of hit in the heart, because you feel like he is trying to save. Like, before it happens, you feel like he's trying to do. And then when it happens so fast, you're kind of stunned. And the film tries to end on a positive note, and it does. It does try to end on a positive note. But that's exactly where it goes. I don't need to move anything around. It's not perfect. It's not great. It's a good film. But man, does it have issues, and I have too many problems with it to me to be like, yeah, let's pick and watch this. No, that's definitely not it. Right, so that covers. Well, no, I still have one more series to talk about. Still one more series before we get into any of the new Trek stuff. Star Trek Enterprise that aired in 2001. September 26th, 2001. Ran for 4 seasons and is a prequel series, originally calling itself Enterprise for the first 2 seasons, and then Star Trek Enterprise for season 3 and 4. The reason being, and it's so stupid, one of my many issues with Rick Berman and whoever in the studio said this was good, wanted to try and separate it from the Star Trek moniker. And it's like, why? To avoid franchise fatigue? Because again, remember, folks, from 1987, when Next Generation premiered, there has always been a Star Trek on TV. So from 1987 to when Enterprise was canceled in 2005, there has been there was always a Star Trek series. And then you had the Next Gen movies coming out. So Star Trek was constantly on television. So yeah, franchise fatigue was possibly setting in, but still, it's still a Star Trek series. It wasn't like they were trying to hide anything. It's like, it's still Starfleet. It's still Enterprise. The ship's called still Enterprise. There's Klingons. They're Vulcans. You have all these Star Trek staples. So why try to hide it? Anyway, Enterprise has its fair share of issues, none of which kind of change my opinion on it. The cast is brilliant. I love the cast in this show with Scott Bakula as our captain, Jonathan Archer. It is very well written. There are some amazing episodes. And when we get to the end of season 2 and into season 3, where it becomes more overarching stories again, this show definitely tried to tackle those heavy themes at the time. Again, this aired in 2001, and they tried to incorporate elements like the fallout of 9/11 and how America handled it, and how it changed the characters overall. And it is wonderfully written. beautifully done. To me, it's one of the most human Star Trek series in that it's so close to present day, and even having been done, oh man, nearly 20 years ago. Holy crap! That I just had that thought, and wow, that hit. It's still like, it feels like it's hitting tones again, which a lot of these shows were able to do, have themes that still are relevant today. But this feels the most closest to present day humanity as a whole. And I love this show. I love these characters. This, honestly, to me, is an S-rank series. It is an S-rank series. Now, it's not, as I would say, on par with TNG DS9, but it's still enjoyable to watch. There are amazing episodes through all 4 seasons, and we're not going to talk about the season finale, series finale. We absolutely are not. So we're not going to talk about it. We're not, because it didn't happen. We weren't hurt by it. We don't talk about it. We don't have to worry about it. This went a lot longer than I thought it would. So I think I'm going to end up doing what I did with the uniform tier list. I'm going to break this into 2 parts. So that's it for 20th Century Trek, again, with Enterprise, because again, this, I count that whole time from 87 to 2005 as a chunk. So that is our current standing as of right now. Next video, we get into new Trek, starting from the Kelvin timeline films to Strange New Worlds, and I can't wait to tackle those, because boy, you thought I had some hot takes in this episode, in this video. Ha! You ain't seen nothing yet, folks. So I want to thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate any likes, comments. Please, let's have a civil discourse. I would like to hear your thoughts and opinions on what your favorite Star Trek series are. But I do know how this fandom can get toxic, so I'm going to just put out a warning right now. No toxic comments. They'll be deleted. I'm not even going to try and be nice about it. If I see any toxicity in the comment section, that's it. No. It's all going to be civil discourse. So, folks, as always, I will see you all next cycle. This is Zayun, out.